So we have like almost like a half mix between people who have a valid GMAT score and people who have not yet taken the GMAT. Great. So a couple of ground rules before we get started. So we will try to keep this organized. We are starting at 4:30. We will go all the way till 6. That's about 90 minutes. And as I said, if you could just shut off all the other tabs that you have open and not get defocused, because really one of the things is to focus on things. So the application process requires a lot of focus, right? It requires doing a lot of research, requires you sitting focused and writing for long hours. So I think this would be a good practice if you can just, focus on what we have. I'm absolutely certain that this webinar, Satish, would be giving you insights that would, be really worth your time. So we'll make sure that that happens. There is a Q&A box. There is a chat box. The chat box is where you actually entered, the city that you are from. So please use the chat to, just talk or discuss any of these questions, any of the points that we are talking. If you have a question for us, please post it in the Q&A box. Just one note over here. We request that please think through and ask a question which will, kind of be something that is generic. Very specific questions, I'll be showing you, I'll be telling you how to manage that. I will be giving you a venue by which after this webinar, you can come to us and we will ensure that all your questions get answered, right? So please don't worry on that part. But when you're posting a Q&A, just think through, make something that is slightly generic. And, if there are
and the third part is your personal background and your extracurricular activities. So when I'm talking about career potential, what the emphasis on the career potential is basically based on what you have done so far and what are your goals, how lofty or how reasonable are they, and how is it that you have planned out a framework as to how you're going to be achieving it, how is an MBA fitting into it. All of these are something that the GMAT is, the B school is looking at. One of the parameters that B schools get ranked on is the employability. How many people get employed from your B school 3 months after the graduation. So it's important for an Adcoms to consider whether this particular person's career goals are something that they are capable of achieving and that the MBA can be of some value add to them in helping them achieve this goal. So that's the career potential and the goal part. It's similar to what you do in a job interview. Basically, they look at your resume, and in a job interview, basically you look at the resume and figure out that the past performance is an indicator of how you perform in the future as well at work. So that's pretty much what they're looking for when you're talking about career potential and goals. In leadership and teamwork, these are the softer aspects within your work. It can be within your work sphere or it can be outside, but this talks about personal traits that are required for managers to be successful in the corporate world. Extracurricular activities, when I say extracurricular activities, it's not, I mean, I keep getting this question over and over again when I take classes, especially with Crackbubble, and when I talk to people, when I'm mentoring them.
Satish, I'm not able to hear you.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's fine now. I'm able to hear you now.
All right. So I was talking about extracurricular activities. When I say extracurricular activities, I keep getting reminded of this various instances where students come to me and ask me about whether it's important for me to join an NGO immediately to see whether my profile is more holistic. GMAT, whenever the Adcom, the B school is looking at an application, they're looking at a holistic application wherein they're looking at your academic prowess, your work experience so far, the clarity and consistency of your goals, and what are the qualities of leadership that you exhibit at your workplace through your recommendations and your essays, and who you are as a person. To top all of this, in one other way to express all of this is by using your extracurricular activities. NGO is not the only way, and social work is not the only way to have a holistic profile. And if you're faking it, it's very easy for people to figure it out during an interview because they do it day in and day out. So just a word of caution over there. And the only purpose of having the extracurricular activities over here is that they don't want one-dimensional profiles. So it's just to show that you don't have a one-dimensional profile. There are other things that you're associated with as well. Having said all of this, when the B school adcoms are looking at your profile across all of these 5 parameters, they're not looking at superstars on all 5 parameters. Basically, it may be 1 or 2 spikes in out of these 5, and the remaining 3 may be meeting the hygiene criteria. So you don't have to be a superstar in each of these 5 parameters that I just mentioned. When I say personal background, this comes out in the interviews and the way you write stuff and recommendations and all of that. It's about the you element in your story and your application, who you are as a person, and what are your interpersonal skills, how good are you in talking to people, what are your intrinsic abilities and characteristics. So it's your story, it's the you element that we're talking about. Yeah, that's pretty much the 5 elements of the selection criteria. What are the criteria that B schools adcoms use? But we're looking at 1 or 2 spikes and hygiene criteria being met across the other categories.
Right. So, Satish?
Yeah, can I move on to the, I think I have.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think I have access to the screens.
All right, I have to give you access now again.
Perfect. All right. Sure. So the next part is to give you an idea as to what happens once you press that submit button. We've all worked with some part, people who are associated with Crack Verbal, including me, have all been part of the adcoms in various B schools that we've been a part of. So once you press that submit button, what initially happens is that the application comes in as a portfolio. All of your essays, your scores, everything puts into it. It comes as a single docket to the adcom, the admin folks. The first thing that they do is to verify the application credentials. Why application credentials? These are the basic information that you provide to them. And post which there will be a team of 2 to 3 people who are going to be reading the application and shortlisting based on the content that is present in the application itself. This will be adcom members, alums, current students, all of them. And once they give a green signal, the interview process, the all important interview process comes into the kitty. And this is the place where you have the most say, perhaps after the essays, to influence the decision of whether you're going to get admitted or not. One-on-one, Skype, telephonic interviews, this interview process then leads to the adcom's final decision. Not more than one reviewer, more than one enabler will be there in this entire process, and eventually the adcom decision is taken based on that. The last part, most of you guys would assume that once the decision is taken, that's going to be the final, that's going to be the last step. The last part is, however, the quality and profile adjustments. What I mean by quality and profile adjustment is that, think about me as a business school. I'm the one who's the adcoms director of a business school. I have also the responsibility to create a very diverse group of a cohort of students, so to speak, for the current class, because that is also the parameter that determines the prestige of an institution. The percentage of women who are part of the class, what are the industries that are represented, what are the goals of these people who are going out. So that also determines the post MBA industries that is going to be placed. So all of these will be taken into consideration. Let's say, for example, that there are two people who are exactly the same ethnicity, exactly same gender, age bracket, scores, and undergraduate degree, applying for the same spot. If I already have selected 2-3 people from the same ethnicity, same set of brackets that I just mentioned, then I have lesser incentive to bring in that person. That person have to be exceptionally talented to bring that to warrant a selection after this. So it's not just based on your Adcom final decision, but it also depends on the portfolio adjustments that he needs to make as an Adcom director. So I mean, the relevance of this, I will probably relate to it in a couple of slides back, but I want to leave you guys with this thought before we connect it to the the later slides.
Right. So I think there's another thing that Satish had, because as we write, like when I'm helping the applicants write, one thing that I tell them is the first time that they go through the file, they read the application, they probably are going to go through it in about 15 to 20 minutes, right? And that's because of the sheer volume that they get, correct, for each application round.
Absolutely.
So I think that's also a very important thing that people should keep in mind, that 15 minutes is all that I have. They have to read my transcripts, they have to go through my GMAT score, go through all of it, the whole docket, right? And you want to really make sure that something about you stands out. Otherwise it's very easy to get lost in the crowd.
Yeah, very pertinent point, Arun. So I would, for those of you guys who have not really taken part in this application process, if I would probably give you an analogy to relate to this. Most of you guys must have definitely worked on your resume at some point of time. I hope you guys know that when an HR actually receives a bunch of resumes, they hardly spend under a minute. It's never over a minute. It's that within a minute that you need to give that wow factor, that there's something in this guy or girl, and I need to meet this person to elaborate on this better. So you need to leave the Adcoms or the alum with a wow factor. So the way it's done is that you need to differentiate as much as possible yourself, not with the objective of just differentiation, but to showcase what you've got, what you've done in terms of your peak points, what you are as a person, and what are your key qualities, and also about how different you are and how unique you are, so that it intrigues that little bit of spark in the Adcoms committee, so that they want to talk to you.
Right. So I think the other way to look at it is also, in terms of the multiple rounds of review that happens while applications are read. So I'm not sure how it, like ISB also, you have students who first who do the review, and then it goes to the next level where someone from the Adcom reads it, right?
Yes. So the student pool, they float out a mail to the student community wherein they can take part as part of the Adcoms board. The students get a bunch of applications. They do the first level of reviews, then it goes to the Adcom board.
Right. So I think, also what could happen is that, in the Adcom board, I think, at a very psychological level, there are 3 buckets where they would place them. They would say yes, no, or a maybe. But I think the final decision is still taken by someone in the Adcom, correct?
Correct. The final decision will still be taken by the Adcoms board.
Right. But I'm just thinking that, even when the Adcom picks up something which a student has actually given a negative review for, I think at a very psychological level, it could also play, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like I mean, I don't know whether the right word to use is biasing, but that's pretty much, it's a preconditioning. So if a student classifies it as a yes, as a 100% yes, the chances of rejecting that profile would be lesser, because initially it is it's already an opinion is formed per se.
Right.
Maybe, yeah, it's a very subjective call, but I know there is a negative intuition to begin with.
Right. True. Cool. So I just had a couple of things. We can go ahead.
Sure. This is actually better. I mean, in fact, the more conversational it is, the easier and less boring it is for them.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, the next part is the application process timelines. The poll actually gave me a good insight in terms of how many of you guys have actually done the GMAT, done with the GMAT and this course. I'm guessing about 50%.
Yeah.
The first part is obviously preparing and taking the GMAT. The good news for those of you guys who are done with it, at least a portion of your journey is done. The bad news is for all of you folks who thought that the GMAT journey is difficult, wait till you get to your essays. The amount of work that is required in working on your essays and your applications is significant. And I don't want to underplay it as much as, to the best extent possible, because that's the bulk of the work that is there. So once you have your score, you obviously need to research on what B schools will suit your need. What is your goals? What are this particular B schools known for? For example, a finance school, what are the, maybe Columbia is known for finance because it's closer to Wall Street, stuff like that. And then you work on your application essays, your recommendations, and your transcripts, interviews. And once you get the decision, the underestimated part, which takes its own significant amount of time, is your visas and sorting out your finances. And if you guys didn't know, most B schools expect you to have tests and orientation classes before the start of the semester itself, the first semester. So the drill begins much earlier than actually the first day of college. Yeah, so I just wanted to leave you guys with this. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but predominantly, if you guys are looking at applying for R1 this particular year, for most of the business schools, top business schools in the world, it starts off from early September and mid-October. Pretty much most of the R1 deadlines are over. By R1, I mean the first round and the early application. So it's about till October. It's a 1.5 month period between September 1st to October 15th.
So one thing, what I would usually suggest to people is, if I were to go back to the previous slide, from a timeline perspective, I think, I think that's a problem with slide movement. So I think there are two categories. So those who have taken the GMAT, Satish, I would imagine that we should advise that they should try to apply in round 1, correct? So that even they don't kind of this, I think that part is there. And then those who have not taken the GMAT, there is still round 2. So round 2 is something that happens in January, correct? So
yeah,
I think that's the next slide.
yeah, it was just coming. We are just coming to that.
Right. My bad.
No, that's okay. For some strange reason, I'm not able to control. All right, fine. Thanks for helping. So the next question is about the which round are we supposed to apply to? So there's this round 1, round 2, round 3. I'm pretty sure all of you guys are confused about which round to apply to. The all-encompassing rule is this: apply when you're ready, and not 100%. I would say 90% to 95% ready, because the amount of, I know there are certain perfectionists in the world who always want it to be 100%, which never happens. So I would, my overarching rule is that apply when you feel that you are 90% ready. But if you were to ask me between round 1, round 2, and round 3, what would you want to apply? And this leads from the earlier point that I had made about the Adcom director's agenda to create a diverse group of students. The idea is that round 1 is always going to be better when you want to apply compared to round 2 and round 3. The reason being, think of it as, the analogy that I would want to give, and I'm stealing the agenda from the analogy from Arun here. So basically, let's say you have about $100 of pocket money or $1,000 of pocket money, 1,000 rupees of pocket money to begin with, school days. And this is the start of the month. You will be going out and having those quality walls ice cream. And then towards the end, 90s kids will probably relate to it. Towards the end of the month, when you're really scarce for money, you would be okay with anything. That small rasnas, frozen ones, that is also fine. That's pretty much how each one of the Adcom directors are also going to be behaving. Anyone who meets the hygiene criteria, obviously that's a no-brainer. You need to be eligible and qualifying their set of criteria. Harvard is never going to be taking a candidate who is not eligible or not fit to be there. So the eligibility criteria is one part that is a no-brainer. It's a hygiene thing that everyone does. But once that is done, the Adcom director has a lot more leeway to play in terms of what kind of candidate can come in. Let's say I can have a class size of about 60. I already have 5 Indian IT male already admitted in round 1. And then a 6th one applies during round 2. And there are 10 other Indian IT males who are competing over there. I have very little leeway to get in another Indian IT male because I need to maintain the diversity of the class. So the sooner, the better. So that's the reason why a round 1 is always preferred to a round 2 and round 3. But the overarching rule is apply when you're ready. There is no point at the end of the day. You can't compromise on your GMAT scores. You can't compromise on the quality of the application, because the overarching rule is that no business school will allow a candidate who is not fit to be in that business school to get in. It dilutes the quality of the business school, and that's pretty much it's like the holy grail that no B school wants to meddle with. So you would have to obviously be 90% plus ready in terms of your applications and your GMAT scores. And given an option, if you can prepare beforehand, round 1 is preferred to round 2 and round 3. Once this round 1, round 2, round 3 conversation is over, I also wanted to talk to you about something called as the early round. The early action round. So basically what early action round is, there are a few business schools, and these business schools offer the option for students to apply before the start of round 2 for most of the business schools. The benefit for them is that they get to lock in on students who are eligible beforehand. And the funda behind the early action round is that before R1, there is the possibility for you to create your application and send it across. And if you make it, there is the admit that is being provided to the student, and then a legal agreement comes along with it that you would be applying to this business school, you'll be joining this business school and you're accepting it, and you will not be applying to further business schools. So it's a win-win for both. If one of your target schools is offering this early action round, then please go ahead and apply for an early action round. If you're dicey, then probably not a great idea. But if you know that this is one of those B schools that you are 100% likely to join if you get an admit, then early action round is certainly something that you need to look at. There are about 6 business schools who offer this early action round. IAC, Darden, Cornell Johnson, Fuqua, Columbia, and Kenneth Flagler. So a whole bunch of, if your top business school choice is one among these 6, and I would certainly encourage you to apply for this early action round. If it is not there, then think about, if it's not in your top 3, then I would suggest to probably weigh in the advantages of applying to an early action round to versus a round 1. Obviously, the ease of selection is going to be slightly more better, and odds will be in your favor. Share it purely by means of the number of people who are going to be applying with a similar background. So I know that they're going to.
On that, I just wanted to, so for the last part, just wanted to add that, the earlier point that I had mentioned, which is if you have already taken the GMAT, my suggestion is to apply in round 1 and have some schools in round 2, correct? You have more time. My suggestion would be to spread out, because once you start writing your applications, you'll realize it actually takes a lot of time, right? So just that's my advice to them. Satish, and people who have not taken the GMAT, perhaps take it by November so that you have a good 1 month to prepare your application and apply in round 2 in January, correct? So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, that seems like a good definition of broad timelines. So basically, people who have done their GMAT, R1 seems like a very realistic target. And for people who have not done the GMAT yet, try to get your GMAT done between in early October or November, so that you can apply. You'll have about a month's time to prepare and apply for your R2 rounds. You can ask me whether, then what's the point of having a round 3 at all if no one's going to get in? There have been cases where a lot of people have gotten admits in round 3 as well, but the reason why we are suggesting that round 1 and round 2 would be better is because of the fact that your odds are getting in are much higher. It's at the end of the day a probability game, and if this is where the distinction between probability and possibility comes in. If you were to ask me whether a round 3 admit is possible, certainly yes. How much is the probability? I can't give you specific numbers, but certainly the probability of getting in round 1 and round 2 is much higher than in round 3.
All right.
Yeah. So I've been told that in the earlier webinars, there have been discussions about application essays per se and pointers regarding it. So this is just my 2 cents, and it's not like the most structured one. This is just my take on how you're supposed to be going about doing it. So this, I would want to probably do it with a little bit more of a personal insight as to how I went about doing it. So the first part is, once I've gotten done with my GMAT, and I would suggest you can do it concurrently as well, is to just list out all the activities that you've ever done, all the key highlights of your life so far, personal and professional. And then look at those key highlights within them, pointers within them, which can obviously make you stand out, which are your high spikes, and which are those pointers which can help you differentiate yourself from the rest of the applicant pool. That's the first part. You need to invest time in actually listing out all of your achievements, if not in great detail, at least in small pointers, small paragraphs maybe, and then look at those pointers which are the ones which can differentiate you from the rest of the applicant pool. It can be both from a professional point of view or from a personal standpoint. The next part is, sorry, Arun, could you help me out?
Sure. Oh, 1 second. I think my mouse control is just 1 second.
Sure. Yeah, while that is getting sorted, I'm going to proceed with it. So the first part, as I already mentioned, is to enlist all of the pointers that you've ever done, highlights of your career, so to speak, and then look at those key highlights that you can talk about in terms of essays, in your essays, and differentiate yourself from the rest of the applicant pool. The next thing is the career clarity part. That's where you need to invest in finding out what is your post-MBA career path. Most of you guys make the mistake of assuming that getting into an MBA program is an end in itself, is a goal in itself. Unfortunately, most of the Adcoms do not feel so, and rightly so. Trust me, I've gone through this journey myself, and at that point of time, while it seemed like getting into an MBA program itself seemed like a goal, it is not. It was just a way to achieve my post-MBA goals. And these post-MBA goals are very, very important for a B school application. And Adcom looks at this at a very, very minuscule level. They want to look at whether this is, as I already mentioned, the parameter for judging a B school, one of the parameters for judging a B school is also the outgoing salary of the student, and also the percentage employment 3 months after the graduation. So they want everyone to get jobs after B school, and they want good jobs after B school. So they evaluate your career goal and see whether the career goal is not too lofty, but still ambitious, how realistic it is, and how is it that you have related that with your past goal. So if I, for example, say, I am currently doing this, but I want to do this, what I lack is A, B, and C. And I believe that an MBA can help me do this, help me cover up these goals of A, B, C through this, and that. For example, let's say I have a lacuna in terms of financial understanding, and I can say that I want to specialize in B school. I'm applying to Columbia. It's the best school. It's a very good school in terms of finance. So I want to network with a lot of people in finance. I get a strong sense of financial understanding, learn from my peers who are really good in finance, stuff like that. So I mentioned about one lacuna. Then I spoke about how this particular MBA program is going to help me address this lacuna, and how is this, and it also talks about a specific nature of Columbia Business School. So the business school part is also coming into the picture, so that it talks about my research on the B school. Most of the people also make this mistake when we review applications. We notice this error that most of the students go on rambling about the points or key features of the school per se. Columbia is in New York. The whole world knows it. It's closer to Wall Street. Yeah, everyone knows this. Mentioning that just because you've seen it on the website or just because you've noticed something is not going to get you past the breach point, where how you're going to differentiate. What will differentiate you from the rest of the applicant pool is tying together that point with your lacuna and how specifically that particular business school can hone this lacuna, and what is it that you're going to contribute to that B school and the cohort, and what is it that you're going to take it from there, both ways. And it would also be helpful if you're able to think about why a B school or an MBA program right now would be the most ideal thing. Why MBA now? Why not something else is also a key question. So maybe you can just touch upon that in your essay as well. So the ideal point is that if I were to summarize, you would want to enlist a lot of your achievements and then figure out those achievements which are going to differentiate you from the rest of the applicant pool. Invest a lot of time in going through LinkedIn profiles of alums, interacting with them, researching about the B school, figuring out their strengths and weaknesses. Probably not obsess about the weaknesses too much, but figuring out their strengths and how those strengths are going to help you move from point A, which is your pre-MBA, to your point B, which is your post-MBA goals, and tying it together so that it's a conceivable idea for the adcoms as well as the people interviewing you. At the end of the day, you need to back this up in an interview, and the more reasonable and well thought through and clearer your idea is of your post-MBA goals, the easier it is for them to be convinced. And this is something that is extremely important, the most important criteria, if you may ask me, apart from your pointers, the parameters of your GMAT scores and all of that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Clarity is significantly important. The next part is the writer's block, so to speak. You invest a lot of time in listing out all of these pointers, but unless you sit down and then start writing, you will never go anywhere. My personal suggestion is that once you've listed and you've identified that these are your talking points and these are your essays and this is how the broad structure is going to be, I would suggest throw the idea of the word limit out of your head, sit down and write your own life story, so to speak, without any word limits. So once you've got the content over there, it's a much easier exercise for you to cut down the fluff and get to a 300 word or a 400 word essay. If you're looking to construct the most perfect essay in the first go, trust me, it's not going to work. My first essay, if you were to ask me for a 300 word essay, was somewhere about 1,200 words. And I had to cut it down after several iterations to come to the 300 word limit. So get out of what is called as this writer's block. You will have to gain momentum significantly. And this is the way to go about doing it. At some point of time, you need to stop thinking and structuring in your head and actually writing it down. The other mistake that most people do is to get it reviewed by too many people. At the end of the day, it is your life story. It's your story. You're trying to convey something which is extremely personal. It's your story that you're telling to the Adcom board. While review is something which is extremely important, I would advise you against going to, everyone has an opinion. You go to your chaiwala and giving your essay, I'm pretty sure he's going to have 2-3 words of feedback as well. I would suggest that you restrict the feedback to people who are qualified to make it, people who are, offer this kind of service or consulting. That's something that's certainly going to be helping. Previous alums are something that who are those resources which can really help you out. But restrict the feedback and go in for people who are invested in you. whether it's a service that is paid or unpaid. The important thing is that the person should be invested in it to understand, to take time to understand the entire essays, figuring out how it fits to the whole story, and then give relevant feedback. Once you get the feedback, I also want you guys to keep in your head that take all feedback with a pinch of salt. You are the narrator of your story. If it's a valid feedback, incorporate it. And if you really feel that you have a reason behind stating a fact the way it is in your resume, in your application essay, I would suggest to stick to it. Sometimes it's important for you to hold your ground as well. The last part is that the student syndrome.
In the screen that I see, I'm not able to. You're actually on the next part. Right now, I've gone to the fourth point, actually.
Sure.
You're able to see the fourth point, right?
I'm able to see the fourth point.
I'm just going to give you the control again. So just try to see if you can just go press a backspace. Yeah? All right. Cool.
Got it. I got the control. The fourth point is about student syndrome. I don't know whether you guys are aware of this particular syndrome. If there's a deadline provided and there's a work provided, task provided, the time taken to complete the task pretty much consumes the entire time left to it. If it helps, please set the deadline internally about 2 to 3 days ahead. You'd be surprised at about the amount of information that is asked apart from your application essays when you fill up the B-School application dossier. So the dossier is if you talk about ISB, it's like a 20 to 30 page dossier. So there's a lot of information going into it. They'll ask about 2-3 top achievements in your this thing. They'll talk about GRE scores. They'll give you GMAT scores or a GRE score. They have small paragraphs or dialogue boxes where you can enter up to 40-50 words. So, and you will try to structure the words to the best extent possible, and rightfully so. It doesn't make any sense for you to have some really beautifully drafted application essays only to have a lot of rotten English earlier on in your applications. So there is enough amount of time that needs to be kept aside for these applications as well. So I would personally suggest you guys to set your internal deadlines 2 to 3 days prior to the actual deadline of the applications itself. Systems, Murphy's Law, I hope you guys know what Murphy's Law as well. Systems crash, files go off, the internet is not working, power fails, there's an overload in the application website, so we're not able to submit. Trust me, I've seen it all. Year after year, we see a lot of people going through all of this. It's honestly not worth the hassle. So keep the deadline 2 to 3 days earlier so that you're going to be doing it at a much more peaceful pace.
So just one thing on that, just to kind of do a time check. So I think we have about another half an hour left.
Sure.
Right. So yeah.
Yeah, Arun, I think I would need your help in terms of maybe structuring the Q&A between these sessions moving forward.
Sure. I've got 2 open questions.
Yeah.
I'll be taking those. So
yeah. Sure, I'll proceed then. Maybe we can take a pause after the recommendation letters. Yeah, so why are recommendations letters important? Recommendation letters are important because your bosses, if you think about it, be with you for about half of your day, maybe 8 to 12 hours in a day. And these guys interact with you on a day-to-day basis. They look at and observe your interpersonal skills, your influencing skills, decision-making, logical skills, all of them. So they, according to the GMAT and the Adcom committee, and rightfully so, are probably the most right people to talk about you and your skills and strengths. So, which takes me to the next question about whom should you ask for your recommendation. Obviously, the first and the most important one is your own direct superior. And the supervisor role, I cannot downplay it. I hope you guys didn't have fights with your bosses at any point of time in the last 1 year. If so, make amends, because there's nothing that can substitute having a supervisor or a direct manager's feedback. Because at the end of the day, the amount of interaction that you're having with your direct supervisor is high. Most of the B schools have about 1 to 2 recommendations required. Ideally, the first one, if it's a one recommendation requirement, a supervisory role is something that is recommended by most GMAT and B school admit pundits. The reason, as I said, is self-explanatory. They're the most rightly poised people to comment on your strengths and weaknesses and your credibility in terms of getting into a B school program and your potential for success moving forward. Other options, however, include your client, a business partner maybe, and a peer. The peer need not necessarily be of the same cadre. What is more important is the 2-3 other factors. One is the recency. How recent has this association been, and the quality of the association. Obviously, an academic association, because of how dated it is and because of the relevancy over here. If you had been applying for a PhD program, I understand that your undergrad or your postgrad course guide or a project guide would be a brilliant recommender. But for a B school program, a work recommendation is much more preferred. A client recommendation is equally valid. The second recommendation, a good recommendation, would be a client or a business partner, or someone who has been working on a project with you, who's seen you, who's interacted with you. That would be a good idea as well. So recommendations from friends and family. No, the idea is that I would personally dissuade you from going in for a recommendation from friends and family. It doesn't. It's the last alternative, and it's not going to add that much value to it. I would ask you to personally focus on quality rather than quantity. So the kind of a resume, a perfect recommender would be one who is extremely invested in you. And by virtue of how invested he is in you and your career, would be able to spend the time and effort required to actually write a nice recommendation. How eloquent that person is in terms of in framing it, what kind of language he uses, and and to what depth he writes. All of this is important, because it's obviously it's obvious from reading the recommendation itself to figure out whether this particular person is invested in your profile or not. A statement that says that excellent candidate, please go ahead and take this person, would probably be a very, very okay recommendation, compared to a recommendation which says XYZ has been associated with me for about 5 years, and I've worked with him in this capacity. I have seen him exhibit skill A in this particular experience, skill B in this particular case, so on and so forth, and a lot of depth given to it. So what should you be doing when you are going in for a recommendation to a person is, firstly, as soon as you finish off your GMAT, or probably even ahead of it, is take enough amount of time, give enough amount of time to the recommender, and don't give 2 days before the recommendation deadline. Give him enough amount of time, go forward and talk to him and tell him that this is why you want to do an MBA. Why, if you're going to convince the Adcoms board, you need to convince your family and your boss as well. So it's good to have this conversation with him and tell him that this is your post-MBA goal, and this is how it will probably be a primer for you as an interview, and convince him that you want to do this, and get his buy-in and convert him into one of your mentors. So once that happens, you also need to provide to him data points, because most of these issues that you are doing, most of these pointers that you want him to write about, are stuff that you have done. And he might be having 10 other people reporting into him, and he might not remember all of this. So pointers need to be provided to him that on this particular project, I've done this, this, this. So your key highlights, somewhat looking like a resume, pointers might be provided to him as hint points for him to write more on. Some of the people also ask me whether we should write the resume or not. Two reasons why I would dissuade you from doing that is one, obviously from the standpoint of the morality and ethical practices. As business leaders or future business leaders, it's not something that is expected out of you, and it's viewed very, very, very strictly by adcoms. You can say your MBA dreams bye bye if there's something, if they catch you doing this. And two, it's very, very hard for a person to write with 2, 3 different styles. So please do not go and get into actually doing your recommendations yourself. That's something that I would completely be and vehemently oppose it. What you can do instead is to give pointers to your recommenders, and a good courtesy would be, once you're done with your applications and once you get the admit, get back to the recommender and probably give them a gift or so. So that's like the basic courtesy of how you should wrap around the entire the recommendations part. There's one trump card over here. If there is an alum from the business school that you are going to, if that alum seems to be associated with you in a professional context and has spent considerable amount of time, you have a trump card. Please use that to your advantage. Alum reviews, alum recommendations are taken with it gives you an edge over any other recommendation. So if there's anyone in your organization who's been an alum of the business school that you're looking to get into, and who knows you, who's worked with you, use as one of your recommendations, certainly, for sure. Do not focus on the designation per se. A person is a president or a vice president, and you're an executive, and since the designation is good, you want the recommendation to happen. It would falter during the interviews and during the applications, because most of us have been in the corporate world to understand that a president or a vice president would not be interacting with an executive on a day-to-day basis. So the level of interaction by virtue of their designations is going to be low. So I wouldn't ask you to obsess on the designation part so much as the relationship and the intent of the recommender to invest and put in a lot of effort in trying to give the best recommendation possible.
Right. So Satish, I got a couple of questions over here.
Sure.
So I think we can take it up. So one question that we actually have already answered is, the recommendation from relatives. So I think Neelam Rana had this question. Even if they are an alum from, ISB or IIM, it doesn't matter. You cannot just get personally. It has to be a professional, relationship, as Satish mentioned. Satish, there is a question which is like, I have a family business, and typically what happens in family business is, you have a father, uncle, who are in the business. And, typically the kind of people that you deal with in terms of clients, they are themselves not very, tech savvy, or they would not be able to write a echo letter. What would be your take on that?
And that's actually a pretty tricky one. The sheer volume of people who are coming from family businesses applying to B schools are telling that that's not a big problem per se. My personal take on this would be hand-holding a client maybe and helping him out. So a client is a very good recommendation, even from a family business standpoint. One of your customers, consultants are another. One of your business partners can be looked at as a good recommendation option. Family recommendations are still pretty frowned upon, so that should still be your last alternative. But when I'm talking about these three, your consultants, your business partners, and your customers, the idea is to give them as many pointers as possible so that they don't have to go through the hassle of trying to figure out. It's just basically making their job a little bit more easier. That is applicable for office corporate recommendations as well as for family business recommendations. Key pointers of what project was happening, what was your contribution in it, and how did they notice it, what was the impact of it. If you provide all of that, and maybe with the skill that you want them to highlight on, maybe they'll be able to put in that much more juice. You're basically giving them the juice for them to write a story behind.
Right. So I think that's a very valid point. I think, This is probably one thing that they have to be conscious of. One other piece of advice I would probably also give them is always best to check with the school. So if you at any given point have a doubt whether the recommender, may not have a very direct bearing on your professional work, I always, encourage that you go and tell the school that, hey, this is what it is. These are the recommenders that I have to choose from, do you think it's okay? And most schools will be able to give you some answer on that, right? Satish, there are a couple of questions I can, just in, because of time, I'll just probably quickly take them and then we can move on to the next one.
Sure. Please go ahead.
So Shakti Dubey had this question, which is it okay to get recommendation from my previous supervisor? If you have been working in the current company for under 3 or 4 months, then sure, go back and get it from the previous recommender. In case a school asks you for 2 recommendation letters, get one from your current company, get one from your previous company. So these are the 2 cases where I would actually be okay with, them actually, going for a previous recommender. The second question is someone is working in Germany and the question is, their English isn't good. So most B schools offer, a professional translation service. So this has to be translated by one of the services approved by the college. So they can actually write in any language. In fact, I had a student who, had one of his recommendation letters written in Kannada and, it was translated. So I think that shouldn't be a problem. I think what we can do is let's probably get to the next part over here.
Sure.
So then we can go back to some of the questions,
Yeah.
You're not able to do it?
Nope. Okay. I think I lost control. Thank you.
I'll just get all the points out in one shot, right? So it'll be easier to kind of go through it. Yeah.
Perfect. The third and probably the most important part after the application essays itself is the B school interviews part. Why is it that interviews are important? It's the same reason why interviews are important for a job application as well. It helps you as an Adcom member, I'm talking from the standpoint of an Adcom member, to assess the candidate on a personal level as well. I don't just get to look at you as data points, I get a flavor of what kind of person you are as well. Now, as a student or as a prospective student, it's your job to use this and take it into an advantage. Now is when you're bringing in the element of you in the whole equation. You can either blow their mind away or you can screw it up over here, which is where it becomes so much more important. The idea is to come across as someone who's capable of handling conversations, who's capable of, who's proving to be good in interpersonal skills and having a conversation about their own career. So at the end of the day, you're discussing yourself. So it's in essence having it's an essay. It's a so to speak a veto or a go ahead of what kind of a person you are. There are 2 types of ways in which interviews can be initiated. For a B school, which is India, which is in India, for example, the ISB, predominantly it is by invite interviews. You submit your applications, they go through the applications, and you cross the basic threshold of selection criteria, and then they call you for an interview. It's a lot more democratic when it comes to the US business schools and some European business schools as well, wherein you can choose when you want to have the interviews. So you can initiate the process of interviews. And this can be helpful because of the fact that it gives you a better timeline as to when it is. I remember when I got my interview call, I had exactly 2 days to prepare for it. And I've been told that in the next few years, it had happened that they give at least 4 to 5 days of preparation time. But it so happened that I had exactly 2 days. So I was taken by surprise. It's another thing that you need, as soon as your application process is done, you need to simultaneously prepare for the interview. That's an obvious takeaway based on my experience. My own example stands testament to that. So you need to start preparing for your interviews simultaneously. And if you are applying to one of these B schools, which favors this applicant initiated interviews, I would suggest you to take this, and it gives you 2-3 things. you come across as a type A person, firstly, wherein you take control of situations, you have a fixed timeline, you have a better visibility of when your interviews are going to be, and you can structure your preparation associated with that. There are two forms of interviews. Who can be taking your interviews? One is the Adcom member, who is part of the selection board from this business school, from the business school itself. And there is also this pool of alums who are always available from each business school who can have an interaction. There are various types of interviews. They can be having coffee conversations. I've heard of MIT 2-3 years back having a conversation over drinks. There've been several different types of conversations, especially the alum conversations goes on in different types. So the idea is that in most cases, the alum does not have access to your entire portfolio. This is not true with ISB per se. They give you the entire dossier when you go in for an interviewing of a candidate. But in some business schools, especially abroad, they have this. They're a lot more obsessed about data integrity and information integrity. So what you submit may not be passed on entirely to the alum. So it's a blind interview, so to speak, in certain cases. Of B schools, especially in those cases abroad. If
so
you
just one sorry thing.
Sure.
Actually, I actually got booted out. My light went off again, right? So now the Q&A, what we had from the audience, I seem to have lost it. So just wanted to let people know that those who did not get their questions answered, can you please retype your questions in the Q&A? And I'm sorry about this technical glitch. Back to you, Satish.
Yeah. So if you were, the last part is, what would you prefer? Would you prefer a telephonic conversation or a Skype conversation or an in-person interview? My personal recommendation, and this is not just for B school interviews, this is for any interview, even for a job interview, during your MBA internships or final placements, whatever it is. If there is an opportunity for you to take up an in-person interview, take it up. The ease of conversation or the possibility of interaction, the level of interaction that you can have in an in-person interview is much better than a Skype or a telephonic interview. If you were to ask me to rate it, the idea would be that take up an in-person interview. If that's not possible, then go in for a Skype interview. Even if that doesn't work out, then go in for a telephonic interview. It gives you so much more opportunity in person to showcase who you are, the you element, which is grossly underestimated by most students. That's one of the key ways in which you can differentiate yourself from the rest of the pool. So that's something that I would really suggest you guys to take in-person interviews as much as possible. But in certain cases where it is not possible, obviously go in for a Skype version. And even if that's not done, then maybe telephonic interviews.
I'll go on to the next one.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just check if there are a couple of questions that we have. So there is one question on, there's a question on pressure interview. Is it common in B school interviews to, like you hear all these horror stories of, grilling them?
I don't know. I guess the I don't know part was for my own case. I've been haunted by this because of the fact that I've been having, not just for this, I've had this pressure interviews 2-3 times at important junctures of my life. My placement at B school, my ISB interview, and my the Economic Times interview as well. I've had the horrid experience of going through pressure interviews. But to be very honest with you, from the experience that I've had and the experience of my fellow mentors and a bunch of students that we have mentored, it's far and few. Especially in foreign B schools, the idea is to have a conversation with you, understand your process, your value systems, your character, your strengths, your weaknesses, and who you are as a person, and bring in an element of your professional and your personal stories to bring out those value systems and characteristics. So it's more conversation led than having a pressure system per se. If If, however, I noticed that as the one reason why a pressure or a pressure interview would be given to you would be if at some point of time they notice that you have a lot of problems dealing with people, if they notice that they really want to check whether I mean, how does this person act under pressure? Does he crumble? If there is at some point of time, if you had given them uh, the iota of doubt that, okay, maybe this guy is going to crumble under pressure, this guy or girl is going to crumble under pressure, let me test that claim or hypothesis. That's one way it can come through. Or maybe he just had a bad day. Otherwise, it's very rare. It's very rare. Pressure interviews are pretty rare.
Satish, just in this of time, we have about 10 minutes left. So probably what we can do is like do a rapid fire for the question and answers and try to answer as many as possible. Even if you're not able to provide a very clear answer, at least if you can give them a general direction, I feel we could go through more of them, you know.
Fantastic, fantastic. I will do that. Sure thing. In the interest of time, I'll probably go to rapid fire round then. Perfect.
So what I'll do is I'll probably keep some of the questions till the end, but there are just a couple of questions that I've had. One is with regards to any tips on the interview prep, like any tips that you would like to give them, like how do they prepare for the interview?
Okay. The short answer to it is do your 5 whys. The only way I'm going to know more about your story as an Adcom or an interviewer is by whether it's true or not. I need to ask more questions. So 2-3 things that you'd want to know is get to the dirty details of it. What is your contribution? What are the steps that you took? What are the data points that were there? What is your contribution in terms of tangible value? What are the, if you were to do something different this time around, whether you failed, succeeded, these kind of stuff. So go into as much depth as possible. Go to the 5 whys. Ask 5 whys. Basically, the 5 why analysis is you ask 5 times why and you get to the root cause. So yeah, specific data and go to depth. So that's my way of figuring out whether the person has actually done it or not.
In fact, one of the things that I feel a lot of times what people think is a pressure interview is actually an interview where they are asking you very valid points. But unfortunately, many times what happens, we put in things in our application we don't think through, correct? Something that we might have written as, you know, my interest is in, let us say, you know, Internet of Things, you know, and then they start asking questions. They're not really grilling them, but I think if you're not prepared for the questions, then even a simple interview could look like a pressure interview, right? So
certainly. So everything that is on your resume, every point that you have written on your essay, have all the data points required for it. If you claim to be someone who is extremely detail oriented, have at least 2 backup stories that substantiate that claim either in your personal or your professional life. And both of these stories, you should be able to give a 2 to 3 minute summary about each one of them. And you should also be prepared for them to go up to 5 levels of asking, why did you do so? Why did you do so? So on and so forth.
Right. Excellent. So I think we can go to the last next point.
Yeah. I think I lost control again.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and.
So the last part is most business schools, especially the ones abroad, require you to have a business resume. It's part of their the admission process itself. The rule is pretty much similar to your business resume. You use the STAR method. The STAR method is the situation. You first talk about the situation, and then you talk about the task, and then the action that you have taken out of what is the entire solution, and then the result. Tangible results make the story so much more believable rather than just giving arbitrary verbs, arbitrary words and language. A qualitative standpoint for that matter, a qualitative point for that matter, would be very difficult for someone to understand the impact of. So if you had noticed on the example provided below, each one of them have tangible numbers associated with it. Now, I'm not asking you to fabricate numbers. That's unethical and something that you will never be able to substantiate claims on. And these people are business experts. They'll be able to figure it out in a jiffy. Spend the time in analyzing the projects that you've worked on, figure out what are the solutions that you have proposed, follow the STAR method and come up with this. Most of these terms that are provided, most of these pointers that are there in the sample resume also start off with the action verb. For example, directed, supervised, and served. These are called as action words. There are plenty of lists available on the web which talk about these action verbs, and these action verbs talk about these are the right ways to start off a resume pointer. Any point any subdivision of your resume, for example, any post that you've taken up, I would suggest not to have more than three points. That's the 3-point rule. Do not go in for more than 3 points, because then you're talking about everything. Every time you put in a point, ask the question whether you're adding value or are you diluting the quality of your resume. A one pager resume is the ideal size of a resume. Do not go beyond that unless you're Stephen Hawking. It's not warranted. So stick to it. That's pretty much the overall guidelines. The last and most important point is, do not go into technicalities. And this is applicable for application essays as well as for your resume. If I talk about supercritical thermal boilers right now to a fashion guy who's recruiting me, he's not going to understand. And by virtue of you being MBA folks or prospective MBA students, you are going to be employable across industries, functions, and geographies. So do not get into too much of industry specific terminologies. And if you ever have to, make sure that there is at least a small explanation around it.
I think allowed to move?
Yeah.
Okay. So any questions on resumes, please post it. And I think after the last thing will be, yeah. So
yeah, the last part is the all important question of how are you going to finance your MBA? Let's say you got an admit, how are you going to finance your MBA? Before we start off with anything, the first thing is that the thought that I wanted to put forth is there is never going to be a scenario where an admit has been provided to you and you're not going to pursue the MBA because you don't have the money for it. There are ways in which you can fund your MBA. So that should be the last of your worries, but an important point to pay attention to. There are several ways to get this done. The first way is having non-collateral loans from a foreign bank. By virtue of non-collateral, it means that you don't have to mortgage your property or your assets against a loan. So there are a lot of business schools, especially the top 5 to 10 business schools, which tie up with several business institutions to facilitate this loan for you. For example, Harvard ties up with Wells Fargo, so on and so forth. So these guys once you get an admit, they're going to help you get the financial aid that is required for you to join. The next thing is non-collateral loans from specialized institutions. There are several specialized institutions. I don't want to name specifically them, but there are several institutions which offer the same service for MBA students without the need for a collateral. The third part is the non-collateral loan from an Indian bank. Let's say you're an Indian student and you're trying to move to the US. This part is slightly more trickier because the amount, by virtue of the guidelines, financial guidelines and rules and restrictions that is imposed over here, the amount that you can take from this particular way or this particular option is slightly restricted. But if you were to get into an Indian B school, then this is probably something that's certainly the most easiest way to get it. For example, the same way in which considering similar to the option number 1, option number 3 is applicable for, let's say, an ISB. It ties up with every bank available under the bracket, and they give you non-collateral loans at very reasonable interest rates for you to fund. The last 3 parts are something that I need to pay more attention on. People often underestimate the amount of self-finance that is possible. When you pursue your MBA program, you will get a lot of money, and it's very easy for you to brush it under the carpet. But if you use your finances well, and if you take these important calls, the amount of financial burden that you will be taking up post B school will be that much more lesser. Trust me, when you have a 40 lakh loan on your head when you're at B school, it's an incredible amount of pressure, apart from the pressure that you'll already be going through being part of a rigorous program. So use that provident fund wisely. Reach out to that uncle who has always been asking that, "Kabhi bhi US mein kuch problem hai, please reach out to me." make use of all of that. So that is the sixth part of soft loans from FFF. Friends, family, and father-in-law, as Arun keeps saying. But I don't want to sound sexist here. So I'm basically telling you that put your sources to work for you. It might be take that maybe a small loan from your family to support you during MBA. You don't have to take the entire amount as a loan. That will significantly lower the burden of pressure that you would have when you go in for those placement programs. The last part is obviously the scholarships. There are plenty of scholarships available at each business school. If you feel that you are eligible for a scholarship, and some business schools also require you to write an essay for it and participate in a process for the scholarship selection. Some business schools do not require it separately, but this is an avenue that you should certainly look at. Even if you don't get the 100% scholarship, whatever percentage you get, in the similar fashion to financing your own MBA, cut down on your loan as much as possible. Your debt should be as minimal as possible so that you don't have that much pressure moving forward. I'm pretty sure Arun would have a little bit more points to add over here. Arun?
Right. So I think just a couple of things. I think, I had discussed earlier with you, Satish, the non-collateral specialized institutions. So I think we can actually name them. So I think Prodigy Finance is one of them, correct? So there's also this question that someone had about Prodigy Finance. So what has happened is, after the 2008 subprime crisis, till 2008, most of the US banks, like you could apply to any school in the top 50 and you would get like a loan, correct? But with the subprime crisis, what really happened was, students ended up not getting, the loans. And that was the opportunity that many of these companies saw. So what these companies typically do is they are basically fintech companies, right? So as a fintech company, they raise the funds from HNI. Many a times these are B school alums themselves, because B school alums understand, see, what happens is conventional finance doesn't understand this whole concept of an MBA, correct? But I think, the biggest asset that you have, which you want to put on mortgage, is really your reputation, correct? So nobody wants a bad CIBIL score, or nobody wants to be a loan defaulter. So I think this is something that banks have not really understood. So I think Prodigy Finance Avance is another organization. So we work closely with both Prodigy Finance, Avance, Empower. So in case you have any questions regarding funding, because these are all non-collateral loans. So what they do is they have an algorithm. So based on your experience, based on your post-MBA goal, based on the college that you apply, right? So they take a bunch of these factors and they come up with a magic number, which is the percentage of loan that they would provide. So in most cases, it's like up to 100%. So, but it's never 100, right? So they cap it off at about 80 or so percent. So it's a significant, number all the same. So I think that's the biggest change that's happened in the last couple of years as far as the whole post, the whole funding scenario is, right? So cool. That's all I had on that topic, Satish.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty much wrapping up the last few slides. So if we can help with the Q&A, maybe we have rapid fire questions. And
So I'll do one thing. I think I have like a bunch of 5 or 6 good questions. Let me just go through it. So let me just answer, one question that came in. So he's IIT graduate with 4 years experience, 710 GMAT. Manager may not have put in a detailed recommendation, but I'm sure he would have written good points. See, the whole idea is, when it comes to recommendations, you have to understand that you need to play the game well, right? You need to be able to build a rapport. So, if it's a manager that you can, go buy a beer, then probably I would suggest that, basically break bread with them, right? Take them away from the office environment, take them to a cafe, or even go to your own cafeteria. Talk to them, approach them saying, hey, I admire the way you work, and, I realize that I need an MBA, and, you think that is the right decision for me. See, when you put them in that scenario, most people, when they come commit to it, right? They will say, you know what, yeah, I think you should do an MBA, and I'll be able to help you on that. The moment they commit, right, you can go and give them periodic updates, right? So every couple of weeks, so they know mentally that they are committed, they are invested in the process. I think a lot of times in recommendation, people go to the recommender at the last moment, right? And so that's just one point I wanted to just mention on that, Satish. So I have one more question which says, if someone has no clarity on how to choose or look for a post-MBA career goal, what do? They basically want to just apply and, figure out what life has post-MBA. So what do you suggest?
All right. My personal take on this, and this is, people might, I mean, it can spark off on the wrong side, but I'm going to still voice it out. My personal take on this is an MBA is not an end goal in itself. It might seem so because you want to exit your current predicament. Maybe you're having a fight with the boss. Maybe you don't like your job. While it is something that you can do, I would certainly dissuade you against it. I would much rather ask you to spend some time researching around B schools and post MBA job opportunities. What kind of job opportunities work for you? Maybe talk to a bunch of alums who have done their MBA. Try to figure out what works for you. Then have at least a hazy idea of what you want to do post MBA. An MBA cannot be an end goal. It's an enabler to achieve your end goal. That end goal might be as simple as career growth. You just need to spend some time, maybe spend some time with yourself over a weekend, wherein you figure out what is your post MBA goal. You spend a lot of time researching about opportunities available. Most of the people, at least, I was an ignorant brat where when I went to B school, I did not know that there was a potential for something called as product management. At that point of time, it was still pretty nascent. I found it to be extremely amazing. No one is going to hold you accountable to what you're writing on your essay. In fact, I remember me writing my essay saying that I'm currently a project manager in a government company, and I want to become a program manager handling a whole bunch of projects in infrastructure, and this is what I lack, and so on and so forth. And I want to get into the private sector because I wanted to go faster and get some
Satish, we just lost your voice on that. All right, so I think till the point Satish comes, there are a couple of questions where people have been asking about deadlines. I would recommend, please, Google for such questions. I really, my memory is bad, so I may not be the best person to tell you what is the deadline for a particular school. I would just Google it out, right? Till we get Satish back, I got this question, which is, what about the scholarship process? Should I be applying for it separately? See, your first main focus is to get into that school, okay? My suggestion is don't even worry about things like, what will happen, whether I'll get the scholarship or not. Get into that school. Once you get into that school, what both these schools do is they look at your profile vis-a-vis other profiles, and they end up giving you a scholarship if they really want you in that school, right? So my suggestion is don't worry about the scholarship, but yes, the scholarship application process actually happens through the application itself, right? So once you apply, you will realize that there is a separate box which makes you eligible for the scholarship. Okay, so since I'm not able to get Satish, let me take one more question.
Sorry, I'm back.
All right.
I'm sorry, I dropped out of the call because something problematic with my internet connection. So we're open for Q&As.
Right. So Satish, just the last, I think we are already beyond the time. So I'll just probably take the last two questions, and then we can probably wrap it up. Yeah.
Sure.
am not sure what the question is, but I'll just read out. Can I mention the appreciations I received from my superior, even if I don't have any certificates, letter of appreciation to prove it? There are no letters of appreciation, right? I mean, you can't send an email where someone has appreciated you and take a printout and put it. So there are specific, it's a very specific process to get a letter of recommendation. It's not a letter of appreciation, correct? So there is no such thing as a letter of appreciation. Kunal had this question, which is he's just starting out his new job and will be applying next year. Does a recommendation from my boss during an internship during my third year add any value? If you have just one recommendation, Kunal, get it from the guy who's going to manage you in your new job. If you have an option of two, then pick the second guy as the guy who was your boss during your internship, right? I think pretty much that's all the questions we had, Satish. There is just one last one. Is it fine to have figures from current company and not from previous one, or keep information with, I'm sorry, I was not able to understand that question. Alrighty, so I think first time successfully I've been able to go through all the chat, questions. Usually in the webinars, we have a bunch of them till the end, and then we end up running out of time. So thank you so much, Satish. It was really great hearing your views, and I think students also benefited a lot from your insights and inputs on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arun. Thank you for all the participants as well. I had a ball of time as much as in interacting with you folks. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, everyone.